Yeah.
And we have to start by just saying happy birthday, Charles John, 49 years old
Oh man, you just
today.
doxed me.
Yeah, which means that's both of us since we graduated from high school together.
Yeah. And you're one of the few people that's older than me
Hmm. But
because yeah.
but you look 39 because Korean don't crack. Yeah, look at that, man. Cherubic. Cherubic. Hey, welcome to the very first episode of Easy Yoke, the podcast. Charles and I have been talking for more than a decade, even
Right.
before like podcasts. Well, podcasts existed back
It
then,
was just starting then, yeah.
but we've just been talking about we just have all these conversations over the phone, and why not record them?
Yeah, it's like so many people would benefit from the things that we suss out in conversation. And we really do kind of want to get other people to benefit from that because I think there is a huge class, a huge group of people that are walking the exact space that you and I have been walking for the past 10 plus years. So, and what's fascinating to me about our particular relationship is that we started off in the same place, right wing, white informed evangelical Christianity, right? We went our own ways, and I took the path of just your traditional leftist politics. Chomsky got me started, Zinn, people like that. And then I got it more and more radicalized in that. And then you just dug directly into your prophetic Christian tradition, or you discovered prophetic Christianity and dug deep into your Christianity, and then came around, and we really just met back together at that far left critical stance of our experiences stem deeply in oppressive institutions, very man-made, very fictional, I would say mythological. But anyway, so that's kind of where we come from, and and we should describe where Easy Yoke comes from. Do you remember?
Easy. I mean, I don't know how we came up with the name. The name comes from the Bible.
Hmm.
In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells his disciples, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, for my yoke is easy and my
Hmm.
burden is light." And so we just wanted to play around with that.
Right. So the yoke is Yoke, but then we changed it to Yolk, like egg yolk, right? And that was the idea of like incubation, right? Hatching, birthing, right? And then I was
And
coming.
and we love to scramble shit up.
Yeah, absolutely. We did play with all that. So and the other thing is, I was coming from the point of yoga. So yoga is
Right,
cognate with yoke.
right.
So the idea of yoga, I mean, I'm here in LA, I'm here in Hollywood. You see girls all day long walking around with their yoga pants and their yoga mat. And I would suggest all 0% of them know what yoga means, right? They think it
Mm,
has to do with asanas, and that's actually hatha yoga,
mm,
which means violence yoga. The idea of doing poses is the active, violent form of yoga. But
mm,
what actual yoga is, going back to Patanjali, is really about what today we would consider like a meditative, contemplative
mm,
practice, right? And what you do is yoga is you are yoking yourself to the divine,
mm.
right? So again, these things are very cognate, and that's why there's volumes written on
Right,
the yogic Jesus, connecting it to Buddhism, which Buddhism is a yogic practice
right,
because Buddha wanted to reject the Hindu priestly hierarchy, all the rituals. And
mm.
back then they were doing tons of animal sacrifice. Don't tell a Hindu today, yes, you did sacrifice a horse, and yes, you ate it. Okay. They want to pretend like, and your gods were not sky blue. That's a whiteification. That was a Caucasianization. It describes specifically Shiva was so black, he was blue black.
Well,
Okay, he was
Right.
not sky blue.
Right.
Y'all lying out here.
Yeah.
So and
And
then that goes
certainly,
into the tantric thing, and yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. And there's so many connections. I mean, obviously, for Jesus as a rabbinic Jew, um, that yoke would be what his disciples, they're yoked together. So those disciples made a commitment
Hmm.
when James and John and Peter and Andrew left their nets in the boats of their fathers that they were working with, and they left to follow Jesus. They were yoking to Jesus.
Okay, so my interpretation of Jesus's thing is that when he says my yoke is easy, in other words, I this is how I interpret that, because he's coming from a yogic tradition. He's saying you can just go directly to God. It's easy.
Mm,
You
mm,
can get directly to the Father. You
yeah,
can get directly to Yahweh. You don't need these fucking rabbis and these
right,
Sadducees and these Pharisees and these hypocritical fuckers. I mean, he did not like, I mean, he had a ton of venom for the religious establishment.
I,
He, you
I
know,
think that's
uh,
really compelling.
and clear. If you correct me if I'm wrong, if you took an Excel spreadsheet and took every time he damned someone to hell or weeping and gnashing of teeth, it was always for the hypocrites who were the religious establishment.
Right,
And let's make it clear. Yes, that means your evangelical fascist pastor,
right,
okay? Because
right,
he's a racist, he's a capitalist, he's an imperialist, right? It's all pro war, go America. I mean, that is shameful to the yoke of Christ, is
right.
if I'm not mistaken, right?
No doubt.
Your allegiance is only to the divine, to beauty, to life,
Right,
okay? Not patriarchal values and the limited understanding, the robust, prodigious ignorance, the very disciplined ignorance that is fundamental to the current evangelical position, and I mean discipline
right,
meaning you have to be extremely regimented to avoid centuries of human thought. I
right.
mean, you really have to be medieval,
Yeah,
and it's quite literally medieval. So, it's very frustrating to think that today's Christian feels conflicted because some Christians go out and do stuff like read books and learn facts, and then they're like,
mm,
I was raised with this Christianity, and it flies in the face of everything I've ever learned in life.
right,
Like my entire adulthood, I have to like create a bifurcation between knowledge, facts, beauty, art, wonder, and this archaic, primitive kind of savage sort of outlook. And I think you are frozen again, Tommy. I'm sorry.
yeah. They keep
Um,
freezing me, huh? Yeah,
you might have
I
to
look
click
good.
back in.
I look good.
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I think you seem to be paused. Hopefully, it'll come out fine on the broadcast. But anyway,
Hey,
that was yet again one of my little rants. But go ahead if you
we're
want to
working out the kinks.
pick up.
We're working out the kinks.
Hopefully,
We will always
you
have
can.
rants. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back. We back. Uh, looks like there's a pause.
Okay. So is it
How
is it
am I?
going in and out a little bit?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. It might be. Unfortunately, it might be my wireless. I apologize. Let me turn off some of my thing. Okay. I think you're back.
Yeah,
Do you want to go ahead?
you're a little grainy.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's okay. I can hear you
But
perfect.
go ahead. Why don't you speak for now? I'm going to make sure everything's working on my end. So go ahead and
Yeah.
uh,
So one of the things that Charles and I talked about, what we want to just kind of include in all of these episodes that we're planning on doing, the hundreds and hundreds of episodes that we plan on doing, is to start off each episode, and we're 10 minutes into this one already. But what we'd like to do is to start off each episode by doing what's called an Ignatian examen. And the Ignatian examen is more than 1,000 years old, and basically what it is asking the question, recently, what are the consolations and desolations of your life? What's something that has brought you alive, and what is something that has weighed you down? And so what we talked about is to start off these episodes with that kind of sharing, and then see what happens from there. We want to take more of an organic approach to the things that we want to talk about, and maybe a more transparent and more vulnerable approach, because I think that is something that Charles and I continue to lean into, as we take our own healing and recovering seriously, as we move into our 50s. Charles, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm letting you talk. But you were did you mention the idea of of how we want to model a version or a form of vulnerability in what do you call that, in defiance, or to dismantle the current very problematic, and using that catchphrase today, that toxic form of masculinity,
Right.
of be the strong one, don't be emotional, don't be a bitch, right? Don't be a pussy. It's this feminine. It's this terror, this dread of the feminine. It's a deep hatred. We look at the Abrahamic traditions, and one thing we can say is they really hate the vagina. I mean, short of the sons that come out of it, they don't want nothing to do with anything. I mean, the ritual uncleanness. In the Orthodox, to this day, Orthodox Jews, they when they go by the Bible, if a menstruating woman sits on a chair, they cannot sit on it. Frankly, you can't even touch her. Just some of this hatred of the body is deeply Abrahamic, and you don't see it in other cultures, right? And it's particularly this hatred of the female form. So again, to make it clear, male gods were created very recently with civilization. Before that, everything was about the divine feminine. So when you're an Abrahamic tradition and you're trying to usurp this female order that's been there across the world, literally for all of human history, because the idea is that the universe is birthed from the creatrix, right? She's going to give birth to the world, right? It's very obvious. Therefore, one of the most important symbols in pagan, animistic, whatever, the global religion at that time that worshiped nature, that honored nature, right, lived in harmony with nature, was the snake, because you would see the snake peel off its dead skin and emerge renewed. And that was that idea that you would periodically cast off the old self and be reborn. And this was the most important symbol, and the idea that you're birthing this new life, that you're birthing this new regeneration, right? And that's why you see the Abrahamic traditions have to vilify that the snake, became the serpent, and then you have this creator god. Now he's monumentalist, right? He erects statues to his penis. You see the building of monoliths and very phallic monuments. Big large stone rocks that jut into the sky, and then the idea of a man as creator, like men created civilization. And we're finding out increasingly through archaeology that wasn't in fact the case, that there was civilization prior to men's version of civilization. And they routinely seem to not have any war, walls, spears, that it was, yet they had global trade, so a lot of our almost everything youth have been taught or think is wrong, because it's all filtered through
mm,
these lenses of patriarchy, of empire, of racial superiority. I mean,
all the supremacy.
everything, yeah, all the supremacies. And that's something I want you to go into, Tommy, too, is, your idea of supremacy. I mean, they're filtered through this,
Yeah.
and they're in aid of that. They're
Mm,
part of this discourse that creates that, so that we become alienated for ourselves, that we
mm,
hate ourselves. Women are taught to hate their bodies, so those sex therapy sessions, these that they do,
mm,
this woman has the women in her sex therapy things, put down a mirror on the floor and squat over that mirror, and she says, you've got to just stare at your own genitalia. And
mm,
routinely, half the women are just horrified by it, and most of them have never ever done that, because they've been taught to hate it. It's something dirty, it's this, that, and the
right.
other. So anyway, but I'll let you continue. So you wanted to do that check-in thing.
Hey,
I had to run
let's
real quick
dive
to
into
the
it.
internet.
Let's dive
Go ahead.
into it. What's one consolation? What's one desolation? What's one thing that brought us alive? And one thing that has weighed us down in recent days. And I'll start. Um, I think I'll start with a desolation. Um, I'm I'm in a season right now where I feel like I'm really trying to work out um, my old pattern of just pushing through. My kind of inability to to feel and to know my limits and what my needs are. I just turn into a functioning machine and keep going and going and going. And inevitably, what comes up as I go into caretaking mode is resentment. And so yeah, my own lack of being able to name boundaries, limits, needs, um, coming off an exhausting trip to Southern California and kind of like finishing up our work year has been real for me. So feelings of resentment and irritation and anxiety and kind of just swimming in that. My my consolation, I mean, I would say having an amazing partner like Lindsay, somebody who's wired totally opposite of me, and is totally in tune with feelings, and is committed to healing and recovery, and also just um, wired with this tremendous intuition and depth and craving meaning, and that's been huge for me. Um, and we for the first time in our lives bought a condo here in Detroit about a year ago. So being in this place, having a home, this little 2-bedroom condo, um, a place to retreat to and work some of this stuff out and grow and learn. Uh, really grateful for that. So yeah, nothing further from me. On to you.
Okay, and let's see. Let me see if I can. I'm sorry, I'm not good at the layout
You're
here
you're
yet.
you're yeah,
Yeah,
you're
no,
co-facilitator and director, producer.
yeah, I'm trying to make myself solo here.
There we
Okay, there we
go.
go. Sorry. So yeah, okay. So you said so it's like desolation and consolation. Is that the format? Okay, so
Yep.
I mean, my desolation is my continuing struggles with my mental health, right? So uh, I think long before I knew it, I think I struggled with depression. So when Tommy knew me in high school, you know, I was the I was a star student. I mean, I was literally famous in the school, and that was an awkward thing for me to know that all 3 to 5,000 kids we went to school with, 100% of them knew who I was. You know, Tommy was the other famous person because he was the star athlete, and I was also a successful athlete as well. So, um, you know, I was so busy at that time. I think I never slowed down enough to notice that I was actually very depressed. And because I see that now that I'm not disciplined by a schedule, by an external schedule, I feel myself just sinking deeper and deeper into my feeling of, hopelessness and that kind of thing. So that is, I mean, mental health can be some of the most pain a person can feel, to the degree that it is, I think, one of the only things that can drive us to literally end our own lives. Imagine the amount of pain, and if we listed mental illness as a cause of death, then we would be able to count a lot of those suicides, and you can't do it. For example, there's lots of officer-assisted suicide. So a person will take a gun and point it at a cop, knowing that in the United States, it's different in other countries, but in the United States, that's 100% chance you're going to get a bullet straight to the heart. I've talked to cops. They don't shoot to injure. They shoot to kill only, and they go for center mass shots right away. So that's why Americans, whether they know these specific facts, they know I can't, because I had a friend who committed suicide a couple of years ago, and he would tell me about all the attempts he had. And he says, your body won't let you. That's why it's whenever a celebrity dies, there's a rash of copycats because people found a new way. So when Robin Williams died, he hung himself on his doorknob, and my friend tried it, and he said I didn't have the right kind of door because his arm forced him to reach up, and it wouldn't let him do it. Eventually, he succeeded by jumping in front of a train. Again, that's an old method too. So imagine how much pain a person is in, and so I mean, my consolation to that is I just got a new psychotherapist, and thank God for socialized medicine. Okay, because I'm on poor people's, I'm on Obamacare. Okay, I've never had health insurance before because I was always too poor. And of course, Jesus wants us to die for being poor. Just remember that, evangelicals. Okay, Jesus said, "Thou shalt kill yourself because thou art poor." Right? That was his beatitude, right? Evangelicals, pull your head out of your ass. Okay. So here I am with Obamacare, and it's so hilarious that they tried that these Christian fascists wanted to label Obamacare to make it a negative thing, and people are like, that might backfire them. Sure enough, everybody loves their Obamacare. Even people who say they hate Obamacare benefit tremendously from it. So I've got Obamacare, and I get a psychotherapist, and it's wonderful. I have an Asian American, so I just switched to an Asian American. I had a great therapist before. She was a white lady, and she was very affirmative. She was 100% on board with understanding problems of race and ethnicity and empire, all the kinds of things that I rant about. She was all on board. But after about a year, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I really need to work on my traumas. And so she said, let me look around. I'm going to ask some of my colleagues. It turns out in her very own office, she had a lady who works specifically on generational trauma. She's Chinese American. It's like, oh, okay. And so now I switched to her, and it's been only 3 sessions. I've made more progress in that previous year. Again, not to downgrade, that therapist was what I needed for that time, but I'm making progress in leaps and bounds because I don't have to explain to her what my situation as an immigrant, coming from an immigrant family. Your typical run of the mill dysfunctional immigrant family, nothing special, but radically I mean, the brutality, in these families. Again, talk about discipline, right? And again, I also, my theory is the sort of ritualistic punishments I got, it just, to me, it's non-accidental. I mean, they would put us on a stool and beat our legs, and I just look at this as like, and I
Mm.
did my research in grad school. It's like this is how the Japanese publicly punished Koreans for speaking Korean because they had
Wow.
banned Korean as a language. They
Wow.
said, "Oh, Korean is a fictional language; it's made up. It's actually Japanese. You're just using it wrong," which scientifically is very wrong. But they had to justify the inferiority and the debaseness of Koreans, and so
Wow.
their missionaries write these American missionaries wrote these things about how little junior high girls would be heard speaking Korean in around town, and they'd be dragged out in front of everybody, stripped naked, and whipped, right? And it's just like, where did my parents learn this sort of discipline? Obey your teachers, and talk about cultural divide in America. Teachers, if they have a problem child, I was obviously bored because school was way too easy for me. It's all squirrely and rascally, always making inappropriate jokes, making the kids laugh, you know, throughout the day constantly, and then they get frustrated and they call my parents in for a parent teacher conference. Again, standard procedure for them. And they're like, I know Charles is the best student, uh, but just because he's smart and is way ahead of everyone else doesn't mean he should make jokes at inappropriate times and distract all the other kids and keep making them laugh. To my parents, coming from a Confucian tradition, your teacher is your parent away from home. When
Yeah.
they drop you off, your teacher is the same thing as your moral teacher,
Mm.
because in Confucian tradition, philosophy is cognate with our word for morality. So if your teacher brings the parents in, it's tremendous shame to the family. You
Mhm.
lose face. Like
Mm.
like your kid is so hopeless, I can't even do anything with him. Where in fact, these women, primarily all women when you're in elementary school, just they didn't have any effective leadership skills. They didn't really know. I never had behavioral problems in math. Right, all the math teachers can handle it. They were doing math. No one joked around and anything like that. So anyway, those were some of the cultural clashes. And so these are and then of course that day when he got, my dad get home, he would be so ashamed and just, again, step up on the stool, go bring in your instrument of torture. I'd bring in the wooden spoon and I'd
Wow.
black and blue, swollen up.
Mm.
And I'd be the only kid wearing long pants and long sleeves the next day. Sunny Southern California. Most of the kids at that time when I was growing up, I don't know about you, Tommy, but most of the kids didn't even own long sleeves and
Right.
Southern California. You
Right.
only need it for a few days. Otherwise, you're wearing shorts and t-shirts every single day. So, I in the middle of summer, I'd be wearing, so, uh, this is the kind of thing I don't have to explain to her. I don't have to take as much time as I just did. And so it's amazing how much progress we're making,
Mm.
and she's
Mm.
able to identify things so quickly. Like, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, they used to ritualistically meet me. Yeah, I know. And it's like, yeah, I think it results from empire. Oh yeah, certainly. It's just there's no explaining I have to do, so we could just jump right to the solution. So anyway, that's my consolation. And again, um,
Wow.
I think it's interesting to bring that up because, um, you know, right now people's heads are exploding. And by people, I shouldn't even say that. Let's be more specific with our terminology. The white evangelical fascist contingent, hates when you mention, oh, I'm working with a therapist with the same ethnicity, so that that I can understand generational trauma, what it's like to be an immigrant. Well, we're all Americans, and all this. I want you to comment on some of this stuff. And they hate this idea. Oh, that's just identity politics, because of course, white means neutral, means
Sure.
universal, right? And so the very notion, how dare you bring in like you're somehow different than the rest of us, and this idea of now I feel left out. I have some white tears for you now. I know you want to talk about your history of imperialism and how you ended up in this country because of U.S. wars of aggression. It's like, but I thought North Korea invaded the South. It's like, yeah, do you read the history? You look at the letters written in the CIA. They're like, we continue to
Right.
send all these spies and saboteurs to the North, and 80% plus are ending up dead. Why are we continuing this insane suicide program? And it's like, hey,
Yeah.
keep it going. It's working out great. So when the North invaded, it's exactly like Russia invading Ukraine. I will never work with someone who's got one of these "I stand with Ukraine" things. It's like, okay, well, you've been asleep. You've been in zombie land for the past 20 years when leftists has been saying, you guys need to stop encircling Russia with bases. You need to stop moving east with NATO. Okay, here's the official NATO position. In writing, they say, we are not interested in having Ukraine enter NATO. Okay. In fact, it's impossible for them to qualify because they don't have you have to have, I think, 4% of your GDP go to your military, and they're like at 0.1%, and the other requirement for NATO is you can't have endemic corruption, which Ukraine, it's just a corruptocracy. So they said, we are not interested, and in fact, it will be impossible for them to join. Here's $600 million in weapons. Hey, I got it. Let's do some joint drills on the border with Russia. Right. And let's do it every year for the past 20 fucking years. Are you kidding? And then they've been bombing since 2014. They've been bombing the Russian part of their country, with the Russian speaking, the breakaway regions, right? And those breakaway regions that are being bombed, civilians being bombed, have been begging Russia, please intercede. This is the same thing that happened in Afghanistan. Remember when we were kids, they canceled almost canceled the Olympics. Well, Carter refused to send them. It was Carter's Secretary of State, what's Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? That's his daughter is on MSN now, right? And she married Scarborough Joe, right? The good Republican, right? And they were Brzezinski. Brzezinski is his name. He's Polish, I believe, right? He bragged about how he goaded in his book 1994, Rules of the Game. He brags about how he goaded, he forced the USSR to invade Afghanistan. The official government of Afghanistan begged Russia for military support because these socialists were teaching women to read. And so the US said, I know, we can fund these fucking Talibanis, right? And the Talibanis are first mentioned in the first Anglo-Afghan war in the 1800s. They said, there is a special type of soldier. He is called a Talib. And he is different than the other fighters. He's more motivated, et cetera, because of Islam and all that. So the Taliban has been around forever, okay? But they've always been a marginal fringe that only come to power, when Westerners invade, okay? Right. So here we are funding these people, saying you Harvard-educated Afghanis are teaching women to read. Us right-wing fascist Talibs are furious that you're teaching our 12-year-old daughters to read when I'm trying to sell her off, okay? And so they just started running amok, and starting all kinds of chaos, and the U.S. was like, yeah. And then USSR gets blamed for helping a socialist country.
This is the genius of Charles Shaw. You just wind them up, and you never know what's going to happen. Yeah, it's just you let them go.
Because we are so naive, so people instinctively know, mainstream news, they're lying to us. Okay, we know something's not wrong with the picture. Okay, but you got to be specific. It's time for you to put your big boy pants on and actually learn things. Okay? You stand with Ukraine? Really? Do you know the story about that piece of shit prime minister, the model, the actor? What's his name? Zelensky.
I don't know the full backstory, but I mean, I know.
So prior to his election,
he was like reality TV or something, wasn't he?
He was on it in a drama, like what we would call a telenovela. So there's two formats to television in the world. There's the American style, like sitcoms, never ending, and then there's let's call it the Mexican style of the telenovela, right? So in Korea, the telenovela is very popular. That format, limited series.
That's K-drama.
Right. K-dramas are in the format of telenovelas, limited episodes, beginning and an end, right? We rarely see that in America these days, right? Still, we're starting to sometimes. We called it a mini series. It was just a very foreign format to us. Uh, so he was part of this scripted television show about, guess what, a school teacher who's pro West, who teaches his kids you should speak up for democracy and free speech, and you should be pro West, and you should be able to change the country. And so they say, well, why don't you run for prime minister? And he says, oh, you know what, I will. So second season, he runs for prime minister, and then he wins. Ha 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 ha. Get it? He runs and then he wins. The next year, the same man who pro West, billionaire who funded that television show, then out of thin air creates a new political party, the head of whom is his actor. This the nationally popular. This was like the biggest show of the year, of those 2 years. He was like the, I don't know, the Bruce Willis of Ukrainian television. So then he runs, and elections are usually just popularity contests. The education level of the majority of all voters ever is a hair width above zero, right? I mean, my theory is Ronald Reagan won that election not just because of October surprise, right? You guys Google October surprise.
I'm losing you, Charles. I'm losing you. Where are you? You're on Sunset Boulevard somewhere. But we lost your Wi-Fi. So I'll take it from here. I think one of the things that Charles was talking about. Charles, you there? Oh, there he is.
Sorry, my internet is being murdered out there. Hollywood, living in Hollywood, and this is the internet you get.
Sunset Boulevard.
We're working off of 1920s infrastructure. Go figure. Like most of the people in this neighborhood make their living online, and this is the internet. Go America, right? We're the greatest country, right? We're about 200,000 times slower internet than South Korea, but greatest country, right?
Hey, there's
now we're going to be labeled as America haters.
There's so much to talk about. There's so many different issues that have come up, I think, just in our Ignatian Examine share. But I'm looking at the clock. We've got like 2 minutes. I will say this, and we should definitely have more conversation around this in episodes to come. There's 2 people on the screen right now, and both of us are on Obamacare. Lindsay and I have been on Medicaid for the last 8 years. I just had hernia surgery 2 months ago. I paid 0 copay. I had my vasectomy 6 years ago, 0 copay.
I accidentally severed my tendon in my thumb. I got 2 surgeries already for 0. And it's still, as you can see, I still can't bend that middle joint. So
come on.
I'm gonna have to go in for a 3rd surgery.
Yeah.
I can't. See, I can do this, but I can't.
Yeah. So just so comparing our socialized medicine. Yeah, comparing our socialized medicine to what some of many of my friends are dealing with is horrific. So thanks for bringing that up. It's I think it's going to be an important thing for us to address.
And mention the people mentioning their ethnicities and the pronoun thing. People are there's this new anti-pronoun thing. Oh, I will never talk about my pronoun. And then people are posting memes on Facebook. Goddess. She, and of course the same people who are anti-pronoun will be like, oh, God is a he, damn it. Their heads fucking explode. So
yeah, so much to talk about. Hey, let's close this down, and we will reconvene very soon.
Okay, and what you got for closing words?
Oh, I mean, you're giving me the final say here. I mean,
Absolutely.
a little benediction of sorts. I mean, it is your birthday, and it is New Year's. I have a lot of hope um, for for new creative um, healing and liberation this year. Lindsay and I were running a 5K on Belle Isle yesterday in Detroit, and when I finished, I was waiting for Lindsay and her friend Kate to finish up, and there was a young boy, white boy who was about 7 years old, sprinting towards the finish line, and there was a group of about half dozen black women behind him, jogging, just cheering him on. Go, 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 go. I mean, it was just so beautiful. And at the very same time, a flock of Canadian geese flew over us in formation, and it was just
Wow.
it was a sign of the spirit. You know, I mean, for me, one of the things that did to me is one of the things I want to be this year is more spirituality for me. I want it to be about who I am for, not what I'm against. And that's I'm throwing in with the black women and the Canadian geese um, because I know that that's going to continue to rearrange me and make me something different, make me who I really want to be.
Great. And also, I realized we did not explain the Gregorian imperial roots of New Year's Day. So that was the second emperor, Augustus, who decided January 1st on the Gregorian calendar will be when we create a new year. And so that I want that to be a metaphor and a symbol for how fictional our lives are. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the entire globe thinks that this day, January 1, is this magical day where we decide one year becomes the next. It's and we take it as such a solid truth that it's like somehow dictated to it, like it's part of nature itself or something. It's totally arbitrary by people in power, and centuries later we still live that. So if January 1st can be established through power that way, you really think your 2-bit thoughts aren't? You're not even that intelligent, and you certainly have not done your homework.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you so damn certain about that which you think you know?
Right.
I'm waiting for an answer. You know. So anyway, that hopefully that sets the tone for future episodes. That you could come here to finally ask those questions that you were just like, I don't know, how do I even ask this question?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're there for you, right, Tommy?
Amen.
All right.
Amen. We're out.
Thanks.